There are some stories that never really end. They don't fade away. They don't stay in the past. They come back in arguments. They come back in headlines. They come back in comment sections under old documentaries. And almost every time, they return as the same question. A simple question. A sharp question. A dangerous question. Did the CIA help drug trafficking during the Cold War? Now, right away, we need to be honest. You will hear people say the CIA ran the drug trade. You will hear people say the crack epidemic was planned from the top down. Those claims are not supported by official investigations. But here's what is real, and what makes this story so unsettling. In the 1980s, the United States was fighting a shadow war in Central America. At the exact same time, cocaine trafficking exploded into something massive. Some people connected to that war. Pilots, suppliers, funders, and allies were accused of drug trafficking. Those accusations did not come from one rumor. They appear in official reports. They appear in Senate records. And that is where this story begins. The real controversy is not about a single villain. It is about a messier question. When the United States was focused on winning the Cold War, did it sometimes ignore criminal activity by people on its own side? Because when the mission feels existential, people make compromises. If you are trying to stop communism, you might accept help from people you do not fully control. You might tell yourself you can deal with the consequences later, but later does not always come. Tonight, we are going to walk through what actually happened, carefully. Fact first, without exaggeration, we are going to look at what investigations found and what they did not find. We are going to talk about why this story exploded in the 1990s and why it still makes people angry today. This is not a conspiracy documentary. This is a history of decisions, pressure, and consequences. This is CIA, cartels, and cocaine. So when did the US government first hear accusations about drugs and Contra networks? Not in the 1990s, not after journalists published stories. The warnings came earlier. One of the most important investigations came from the US Senate. Specifically, the Senate Foreign Relations Subcommittee on Terrorism, Narcotics, and International Operations, often associated with Senator John Kerry. In 1988, the subcommittee released a report titled Drugs, Law Enforcement, and Foreign Policy. The report examined how narcotics enforcement sometimes took a back seat to foreign policy goals. This becomes a recurring theme. When governments chase big strategic goals, smaller dangers are treated like background noise until they are not small anymore. The Senate report did not say the CIA planned a drug epidemic, but it explained why suspicion grew, because it described real collisions between foreign policy and drug enforcement. And once people know warnings existed, the question becomes unavoidable. If the warnings were there, why was the response so weak? That question never goes away. To understand this story, you need to understand one rule. When the money gets big enough, crime becomes an industry. By the late 1970s and into the 1980s, cocaine trafficking was no longer just street crime. It had routes, it had logistics, it had money laundering, it had corruption, it had violence, and the demand was real. In the United States, cocaine became a high-profit product. That meant anyone with planes, boats, or connections could become rich fast. But here is the critical part. Cocaine did not expand in a calm world. It expanded during the Cold War, a time when the US government was fighting conflicts it did not always want to admit existed. Now imagine two storms forming at the same time. One storm is a booming cocaine market. The other storm is covert war and political pressure. When those storms collide, chaos thrives. And in the 1980s, Central America became the center of that collision. During the 1980s, the United States was deeply concerned about communist influence in Latin America. One country mattered more than most. Nicaragua, a leftist government called the Sandinistas, was in power. The United States supported groups fighting to overthrow them. These groups became known as the Contras. This is where the story begins to feel like a spy thriller, because the Contra War was not just fought with guns, it was fought with politics, with secrecy, with back channels. And when official funding is restricted, people look for unofficial funding. That context matters. It is part of what led to the Iran-Contra scandal, a scandal involving secret arms deals and illegal support networks. This is not speculation. It is documented in official investigations. But here is the important line we must draw. Iran-Contra is real. Claims that the CIA ran cocaine are not proven by investigations. The drug allegations enter the story because certain individuals connected to Contra support were accused of trafficking. And you do not need a mastermind to create disaster. Sometimes you only need a war, a secret supply system, and people willing to exploit it. In 1996, that question exploded. Journalist Gary Webb published a series called Dark Alliance. The reaction was immediate: anger, shock, grief, especially in communities devastated by crack cocaine. People were not just angry, they were searching for an explanation big enough to match the damage. Webb argued that a drug network linked to Contra-connected figures played a role in crack distribution in Los Angeles, and that the system around them allowed it to happen. Some people said, finally, someone is telling the truth. Others said the claims were too broad, too simplified, too sweeping. What happened next matters. The U.S. government responded with official reviews. The Department of Justice launched an Inspector General investigation. The CIA launched its own Inspector General investigation. The Senate held hearings. This was no longer rumor. It became a matter of record. And records do not offer clean endings. They offer details, contradictions, and uncomfortable conclusions. The Department of Justice Inspector General report rejected the biggest accusation. It did not say the CIA created crack cocaine. It did not say there was a plan to flood American cities with drugs. It pushed back on claims that a small group of traffickers caused the entire crack epidemic. But here is where people stop feeling comfortable, because rejecting the biggest claim does not mean everything worked properly. The report described confusion. It described inconsistency. It described investigations that did not move the way people expected. Decisions shaped by weak coordination and competing priorities. This is the core lesson. You do not need an evil plan to produce evil outcomes. Sometimes neglect is enough. Sometimes distraction is enough. Sometimes institutions fail because they are focused somewhere else. That does not make every accusation true. But it explains why people kept asking questions, because even official reviews admitted the system failed in important ways. The CIA Inspector General report is one of the most misunderstood documents in this entire story. Some people treat it like a confession. Others treat it like total exoneration. Neither is accurate. What we can say is simple. The CIA investigated allegations connecting Contra-related individuals to cocaine trafficking. That alone matters because it means the accusations were taken seriously enough to examine internally. The report does not conclude that the CIA ran drugs into the United States, but it does show something more realistic. In chaotic war zones, agencies sometimes work with dangerous partners. They tolerate risk. They accept dirty alliances. They prioritize one mission over other consequences. That is not the same as running a drug empire, but it is how disasters grow quietly. And that is why this story refuses to die. Because people are not only asking who did what, they are asking what was allowed. In 1996, the story reached Congress. The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence held hearings on alleged CIA connections to the crack cocaine epidemic. Hearings are not verdicts. They are exposure. They force institutions to answer questions in public. They put contradictions on the record. And once again, the pattern appeared: no proof of a master plan, but enough smoke to explain why people kept searching for fire. That combination is dangerous because it satisfies no one. It does not deliver justice. It does not restore trust. It leaves the public with fragments. and fragments are easy to turn into myths. Here is why this story feels like a thriller. Secrecy hides crimes, but it also hides mistakes. In covert operations, information is fragmented. One office knows one piece, another office knows another. No one sees the whole picture. When something goes wrong, the answers sound familiar. I was not told. I was not responsible. That was another department. Sometimes those answers are true, but to the public, it looks like a machine protecting itself. That is why CIA and cocaine is such a powerful idea. Even when extreme claims fail, the system still looks suspicious. History does not require exaggeration. It already contains enough tension, enough damage, enough unanswered questions.